Hello and welcome to this tutorial where we're going to be taking a Cricut Expression and we're going to be reflashing it with the FreeExpression custom firmware, which allows you to take full control of the cutter with your PC, Inkscape, or any other program that can output HPGL or G-code. So to begin, we're going to download Atmel Studio. Okay, I'll put all these links below, by the way, but you'll want to go to the Microchip website, download Atmel Studio. This is by far the longest part of the entire procedure, so you want to probably start that now and just watch the video and then come back to it later. If you're not a user of Inkscape, you'll also want to grab a copy of that while you're downloading things for this video. And the last thing that you will need to download is a copy of the GitHub source code for FreeExpression by TheTazzBot. So you'll want to hit the clone or download zip. Alright, so all of that is the software part of it. The first thing we're going to need to do is open up the case of the Cricut. And it can be a little bit daunting if you don't know where the hidden screws are and how to get to them. But that's part of the reason I'm making this video, is so that noobs like you and I can get through this process relatively easily. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws in the front bottom, and then we've got 2 back here and 1 over here on this side. Sorry if you can't see it all. Now, so those are the screws that are on the bottom. We also have 3 screws, 1, 2, 3 behind this silver cover, and this thing is a bit tricky to get off if you've never seen one taken apart before. So I want to cover how to do that first. There's a couple of little slots here, this one and this one down here, and what you want is you want a really small screwdriver like this one that fits easily in there, and you want to pry those out of there. Let me see if I can demonstrate this easily. So what you want to do is you want to pop that just like that. And what that's going to do is it's going to let you pop off the rest of the cover, which is hiding the screws. Okay, so I've got those 2 pieces out, and now you can just, I'll try and set this a little farther away so you can see what I'm doing here. And now I'm just going to follow along and push straight out away from the Cricut in this direction. Does require a bit of force. I guess while I'm on this topic, flashing your Cricut Expression with this firmware is basically a one-way street. You are never going to be able to use this as a Cricut again with your cartridges. So you know, you can pick these up for about $50 on Letgo or Craigslist. So if you're heavily invested in your Cricut cartridges and you like using the machine for that, I would not recommend that you use your regular machine. Just go out and get another one for 50 bucks and do the changes on there. Okay, so let's see how many screws we actually have on here. So from the side we've got this one, there's one down here. Okay, so there's 4. I think there's 4 screws holding this side cover on. Okay, I'm gonna bring out a a little tray here. Put it off screen for now. Put all your screws in that tray. So you'll have 4 screws from the side. And what, 7 or 8 screws from the back. Okay, so you can see that one comes off rather easy. I did break one of the little clips on the silver thing, but that's not enough to make it impossible to put back on. It does have a lot of clips on there. It has about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 clips holding it on. Okay, so set the lid aside, and that has exposed the wiring harness that's down in here. Now the reason I take this cover off first is because if you just take off the bottom cover, some of these wires are under an unreasonable amount of tension. And by unreasonable I mean that it feels like they're going to get ripped out potentially. Alright, so now I'm going to turn the Cricut back over. Just call it the Expression. It's the Expression. Take all my other screws out. Thankfully, the Expression uses one size screw for everything, at least for holding the case together. So there isn't going to be much confusion when you try and put these screws back in. You can just put them into each hole. Just keep track of which hole you got it out of, because there are a lot of them. When I go into the details of flashing the firmware, I'm not going to get too deep into what's going on there in Atmel Studio, because one, I'm not any kind of expert on Atmel Studio or AVR programming. AVR is the chip, the microcontroller that is used inside these machines. Alright, so let's see if I can retrieve these screws without losing any. Coming out, guys. I could just flip the lid over, but that pretty much assures that some of these are going to end up on the floor. There's one on the floor. You know what I have? I have a magnet. I'm going to use the magnet. Come out wherever you are. Alright, so let me switch over to the other camera. Yeah, so you can see there, you can't really pull this out very easily. Alright, so let's see if I can get a better view in there. So it's a mess of wires, and they're all hooked together without much slack. So just grab each connector that's in there firmly. See if I can give you the details of it. Try and clip this camera where I'm working. Let's see here. Yeah, so there's a whole lot of cables in there. Just pull them all out. Is that really what I want you to do? Maybe not. You know, you guys are noobs after all. Let's leave the cables in. We're going to try and do this with all the cables in. We've got enough wiggle room in here. Alright. Now, this ribbon cable that goes out to the cartridge connector is our way into the firmware. Okay, so there's two ways that we could do this. We could unplug the cable from the cartridge connector side, right? So you could take this connector out, and we're going to use a device to program the firmware in, and you'll have to either purchase one of these or borrow one from a friend that has one. And so this is an AVRISP MKII, and it is a programming device. So it has 6 pins that need to interface to 6 of the pins on this cable. And so what you would need to do is use these jumper cables that are male on both ends and plug things end to end. But there's actually an easier way to go about this for now. I'll go back later and show you why we want to have those jumper cables. So this connector, the other end of the cartridge cable, you could force your 6-pin connector into the side there, but your registration pin there isn't lined up, so it would be a little bit difficult and you would tend to bend some pins. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pry this shell off. The shell is just held in by the pins that hold it, so if you can get your fingernails under there or a flat blade screwdriver, you can gently pry off that plastic shell, leaving the pins exposed. Just keep in mind when you're putting your cable back on that from the front of the machine, the red stripe faces the right side. And just be very patient and pry it up from both ends so you don't bend the pins. And let's see. So it's almost out of there. Alright, so now those pins are exposed, and you want to get the 6 pins that are on the right side with your red cable on the right. Now you'll see that I'm pushing those pins over. Sorry if I can't focus there. Keep those from shorting out. Not that I know that they would do any damage, but you don't want to push your cable on there so far that you short anything out. Alright, so now I'm gonna plug in the ISP device, and what I want to see is a green light here. Okay, now you're not going to see it until I power on the Cricut, and for that I'm going to have to, let's see, I'm holding the camera upside down. For that I'm going to have to plug in the device and power it on. Okay, so we'll hold that guy there. And where's my power supply? Okay, so I've got the power supply turned on, and now I'm going to push the on button. Now you can see we have two green lights on the ISP. This one is solid. The other one's going to blink. It's the communication light, but this one is solid green. That means you have a good connection. If you've got your cable properly connected and you don't see that green light, the most likely reason for that is that you have blown this little tiny resistor right here. And the reason you have blown it is because you have found my hack from 2011 that shows you how to short the pins on the cartridge if you've lost the original cartridge that came with your Cricut, which has no microcontroller in it. It just has jumper wires, and the actual cartridge is stored right there in the flash with the firmware. So if that resistor is blown, you will have to get a replacement resistor, and obviously most of us are not that skilled with a soldering iron that we can put surface mount devices on, although I did manage to do it on mine because mine was blown. Yeah, so you'll want to get a 1 ohm surface mount resistor to replace that one if you're not getting the green light. Right, but that's not the case today. We are getting the green light, and so we're just going to proceed here. Let me switch to Atmel Studio. Okay, so we've got Atmel Studio installed at this point, and I'm going to download the source code. It is about 40 megabytes worth. Okay, then you'll want to extract that zip file. So right click on it, extract all. Looks like I already have a copy of it there. So it's FreeExpression-Master 2. Okay, so it is in my downloads folder. Now I will go to FreeExpression and go in my downloads, source, and there are two project files here. One is designed for the earlier 6.2 version of Atmel Studio, and one is for the current version, and that is the one you want. It's just called FreeExpression.cproj. Double click on that. It says you should only open projects from a trustworthy source. We're going to assume that this is a trustworthy source. And again, I caution you that this is an irreversible process. You will not be able to reflash your expression with its original firmware after this. Okay, it's saying Atmega DFP missing version update 2. Okay, so we're going to download and install that missing component. Atmel Studio is detecting that your project requires that component that's missing, and so it lets you download and install there. The package has successfully installed. Please restart Atmel Studio for the changes to take effect. Okay, so we're going to close this window, and it's asking for another trustworthy source. Okay, so there are actually two projects inside here. One is the main firmware, and one is the code that controls the display, which is a fairly recent addition to the firmware. Okay, so now everything's open, but of course we're going to close and relaunch because it told us to. And where it says save changes, just say no. Okay, so now let's Start Atmel Studio again. You can see our recent project, FreeExpression, is already listed here, so you can click that, or you can click Open Project and find it again in your downloads. It does take a while to load, so you'll get the impression that nothing is happening sometimes with Atmel Studio because there's not usually much going on. But once it's done, I'm gonna say close this ASF Wizard. I don't think we need that for anything. Now we're going to go into build, and we're going to say build solution. Okay, solution is the overall package, so it's everything that was opened. Will take a while. Now there's warnings and then there's errors. In compiling, warnings are typically mostly okay. You can have warnings and still get a good compile of your project. Errors, you usually can't. No, errors will not. Now it looks like it only captured the one piece of it. So let me see what I did there. Open solution. It looked like it only built the LCD part of the project. Huh. Okay, so I clicked on the Solution Explorer, and I think what I'm going to do is right-click on FreeExpression. There we go. Build. It's saying build succeeded, up to date. I'm going to build clean. So build clean will erase everything, and now let's try build again. Okay, now it's compiling the LCD code, or the OLED code, OLED display, which is half of the project. Okay, I don't understand why it's seemingly only building that part of it. Alright, we're going to assume that it did the right thing. Now let's go to Tools and set up our device programming. Okay, so when you open device programming under Tools, you'll select your tool. You should see your AVRISP MKII, the device that you're going to select is the ATmega 1281. Interface is ISP, apply. Okay, so this AVR ISP Mark II has older firmware, and it's saying that I need to upgrade the firmware. I have another one that's already been upgraded, so I never got this step in the process, but good to know. Okay, so upgrading the main MCU. So just keep in mind, this has nothing to do with the Cricut. This is actually the programming device that needs its firmware updated. We hear the Cricut running because the signals are causing it to reset. Okay, so the device has been upgraded, so we can close now. We can apply. Now we can read the device signature. So this is going to query the the microcontroller, and that's the device signature. And now we see that it has a 5 volt. We're going to set the frequency. Tool information. Yeah, there you see some of the unresponsiveness of Atmel Studio. Alright, device information. So it's going to, I assume it's going on the internet to get this information. I don't know that it's actually querying the chip. Yeah, so it's giving us a little bit of information about the device. Oscillator calibration, select 8 megahertz, it's the only choice there. Click read. We got a value, then everything's okay there. Now we get to memories. Okay, if you've made it this far, this is as far as you can go without completely blowing away your Cricut. So I'm going to click erase now. It's going to erase the chip. Erase device for programming, verify flash after programming. Let's see what happens. Alright, it says flash OK. Now we can look at some of the fuses and things, but I wouldn't recommend playing around with those. Okay, so as far as I know, I think we're done with that, so I'm going to switch back to the camera view here. And I'm going to unplug the ISP device, and I'm going to straighten the pins that were slightly bent. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reinstall the cable over the headers, but I'm not going to put the shell back on. I'm going to leave this off for now. As long as you know that the key goes towards the back of the machine, you don't really need that guy there. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to connect the other end back to the cartridge, because like I said, you will never be able to use these cartridges in this machine again. But what I am going to do is I'm going to take this cable and I'm going to run it out through this little slot, making sure not to place it over that screw hole later, because I don't want to screw right through my cable. But what this will do is it will let me do upgrades easily without having to open the machine again, using that other method where I will use the jumper cables to mate these two together. Okay, so now I'm going to temporarily close this up so that I can flip the machine over in its correct orientation. And let's have a look at what you can expect to see if things went as planned. Alright, so here, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get there with this camera. Alright, so you can see two faint ramps there. That is the indicator that you now have new firmware running. If you go to the author's page, he sometimes has some images of some type of load screen, but that doesn't show up. What you see is this. Whenever you turn it on, you'll hear the motors squealing a little bit. You'll see some flashing on the keypad, and that's about it. But you can use the jogging buttons. Okay, and these are all firmware controlled. You can press home, which is let me get the overlay here. I think it's reset all. Yeah, so if you press reset all, the head will home. You can load paper. You can unload. You can, let's see, with the paper loaded, you can change, right, so now you can see media is loaded. If you press the letter G, the device will accept G code. If you press the letter H, it will select HPGL, which is the default mode. HPGL is an industry standard language for plotters. And then there are ways to, let's see, there's ways to set the speed and pressure. Those are not as clear cut to me, but I believe if you hold down extra 1 and then use the plus and minus, yeah, this part's not really clear to me. I have seen it change, but it's not immediate. Yeah, you have to hit unload or something like that. But there's like 9 levels, and then when you hit unload, you'll see the ramps move. I'll have to play with that more to give you some kind of educated advice on that. But yeah, right now as it is, the device is reprogrammed, and so what I'm going to do now is I'm unplugging my AVRISP, and I'm reusing its USB cable and plugging it into the back of the Expression. Okay, and then I'm going to switch over to Inkscape. Inkscape, where are you? Alright, so in Inkscape, I've got my document properties open. Up here at the top, display units, I'm going to set that to inches. I'm going to set my units in the custom size field to inches as well. And you can either put the width at 12 and the height at 12, or you can do 24 if you've got a 24-inch mat, or if you have a 48, I think it'll go all the way to 48. Scale is 25.4, which is conversion from inches to millimeters. Then I'm going to click on the Grids tab, and I'm going to create a new grid. Okay, and for this grid I'm going to use inches. I'm going to leave the origins at 0. I'm going to change the spacing to 0.5. I'm going to make the minor grid line a different color, so I'm going to turn down my red and blue channels and turn up my green. And then I'm going to make a major grid line every 2. Okay, and there is my workspace. And now I'm going to do a spiral emanating from the center going all the way to the edge. And now this part is very important. You have to take your object that you just drew, basically everything that you want to cut, you need to convert object to path. Okay, and then under extensions, export, you're going to find plot. Okay, now before you click apply, go to connection settings. You need to figure out where your serial port is. Now depending on your operating system, this is going to be different if you're on Windows 10, but I think the easiest way would be to run Device Manager. Okay, and under Device Manager ports, you're going to see something like USB serial, COM4. So COM4 is what we want here. COM4. Leave everything else the same. 9600 serial baud rate. The serial byte size is 8 bits. The serial stop bits is 1 bit. Serial parity is none. Serial flow control is X on, X off. And the command language is HPGL. Then we're going to go to plotter settings. The resolution is 400 dots per inch in both X and Y. Pen number and pen force and pen speed, you can leave those at the default. There's nothing else there. Plot features. You want to turn off auto align so that you get exactly what you have on the screen. If you do auto align, it's going to shift the artwork to the edge of your mat, and that's not what we want here. So turn off auto align, and now you're ready to cut. So if all your settings are low, and let's see, let me press load media there. We'll switch over to camera view. Is that the camera view? No. There's the camera view. Okay, so when you click apply, it's going to start sending the job to the printer, to the cutter. Forgot to take the knife out. So it's going through that whole cutting procedure that we saw for the spiral. And it's done. Okay, so if you've made it this far, you now have a hacked Cricut Expression, and you can use Inkscape, you can use, I think you can even use 3D printer software. Not that you can get 3D prints, but you can use it to generate G-code. That's a subject for another time because it's not incredibly straightforward how you go about establishing compatibility and that type of thing with the commands that this machine supports in G-code. But HPGL should get you going with most software that supports plotters. Alright, and that brings us to the end of the video. Like I mentioned before, I will have links to all of the things below in the description area. If you find this video useful, please share it. Please subscribe. I'm just getting started producing videos like this, and I plan to continue doing so. And yeah, if you want to get notified whenever a new video comes out, ring that bell and select the top bell, all notifications. Otherwise, you're letting YouTube decide whether or not they want you to see the video. Okay, I hope you found it useful and enjoy your new cutter. Have a good one.